Welcome to Data Strategic Advantage channel. Our topic today is data storage and records management. Okay, so let's dive into this. Data storage and records management, they really go hand in hand, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. You can't really do one effectively without thinking about the other.
Right. It's like, imagine just shoving papers into a filing cabinet randomly, finding anything later, forget about it.
Exactly. And that's kind of what happens if your digital storage isn't set up with record keeping in mind from the start.
And you need to understand how that digital filing system works, basically, to manage those documents properly as records.
Yeah. And what's really changed the game is technology. What we even call data now is so much broader.
It's not just spreadsheets anymore.
Not at all. You've got images, videos, sensor data, all kinds of stuff. And organizations are using this data for, well, everything. Creating products, sharing knowledge.
Driving success,
Yeah.
essentially. But that leads to the big challenge, doesn't it? How do you actually manage all this growing, varied data?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's getting complex.
So let's talk storage first. The databases themselves, it's not just one type fits all anymore, is it?
Definitely not. There's a whole spectrum. You have the older models like hierarchical network.
Kind of like family trees or webs?
Yeah, sort of. But the dominant one for a lot of, let's say, changing business data is still the relational database. RDBMS, think tables, relationships between them.
Okay. But then you mentioned others.
Right. For analytics like business intelligence or data warehousing, you often see multi-dimensional databases. And then there's NoSQL.
Ah, NoSQL, that's for the messy stuff. The high-speed, varied data.
Exactly. When volume, velocity, and variety are key, and there are even more specialized types, geographic, real-time, key value stores.
And the cloud throws another layer in. You can manage your own database on a virtual machine
Or use a database as a service, a DAC and YAS, where the provider handles a lot of the back-end management for you. Much more hands-off.
Makes sense. Now, I hear terms like acid and base. What's that about? Sounds technical.
It kind of is, but it's fundamental. Acid atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability. That's the traditional guarantee for relational databases. Every transaction is solid, reliable.
Like for banking.
Perfect example. Basically available, soft state, eventual consistency is more common in the big data world with NoSQL. It prioritizes availability, scalability, sometimes accepting that data might not be perfectly consistent immediately across all nodes.
So a trade-off.
A trade-off, yeah. And to handle huge data sets, systems often use sharding.
Sharding.
Yeah, basically breaking a massive database into smaller, independent chunks or shards. Makes it easier to manage and update, like splitting a huge phone book by letter.
Got it. Okay, so we've got the storage tech. What about actually running it day-to-day, the operations side?
Right, there are really two big parts here. You've got the technical support for the database software itself, and then you have the operations support managing the actual data, the processes, backups, recovery.
And it sounds like collaboration is key. The DBAs, the business users, the app developers, they all need to be talking.
Absolutely critical. Otherwise, you have the best tech, but it's not used right, or problems don't get solved efficiently.
Let's talk backups. That seems pretty basic, but crucial.
Foundational. And it's not just about doing them. How often? That should be defined in your SLAs, your service level agreements.
And where do you keep them? Not on the same system, I hope.
No, definitely not. Separate file system, ideally offsite storage too, and you absolutely must test your backups regularly.
To make sure you can actually restore the data.
Exactly. A backup you can't read is worthless. It's like having an insurance policy that doesn't pay out.
Makes sense. And all this data sits on physical drives, right? Organized for speed.
Usually, yes. Physical drives often organized carefully for load balancing, fast searching, and retrieval.
And keeping those databases available, that reliability, serviceability, recoverability, that's becoming even more important as we rely more on data.
Hugely important. And those maintenance windows we used to have, they're shrinking fast.
Yeah.
Downtime is just less acceptable now.
So you need to monitor performance constantly.
You do. Both the quick transactions and the big overnight batch jobs. Regular reports help you spot trends, potential bottlenecks, before they become real problems.
And testing environments are essential too.
Oh, absolutely. Separate environments for development and testing. A dedicated performance testing environment, ideally with the same resources as production, so you get realistic results. And maybe sandboxes too.
Sandboxes. For playing around.
Sort of, yeah. Isolated spaces where developers or analysts can experiment without any risk to the live systems.
And what about moving data, like upgrades or new systems?
Data migration, that's a huge piece. Transferring data between systems, formats, storage types. You want minimal disruption and change to the data itself. It's a major part of any big system implementation or consolidation.
Okay, let's zoom out slightly. Data modeling and database design, these are like the blueprints, right?
Exactly like blueprints, they provide the common language, the documentation for what the data means and how it's structured. Critical for communication.
And there are different styles of blueprints.
Yeah, different modeling schemes. Relational, dimensional for warehousing, fact-based, object-oriented, specific NoSQL models, data vault. Lots of approaches depending on the need.
And different levels, too. Conceptual, logical, physical.
Correct. Conceptual is the high-level business view. Logical defines the structure, entities, relationships, without worrying about the specific database tech. Physical is the concrete implementation plan for a specific database system.
Standards seem important here.
Very. Standards for modeling and design ensure consistency, quality, and maintainability across the board.
And the people doing this are the DBAs, database administrators.
Primarily, yes. Though roles can vary. You might have application DBAs focused on specific apps, production DBAs keeping the live systems running, and maybe database system administrators handling the underlying infrastructure, the servers, the OS.
Right. And we touched on the cloud, but it's worth reiterating, implementing databases there, whether on virtual machines or as a service, really changes the game for scalability and management.
It does. Lots of flexibility, but also new considerations around cost management and security specific to the cloud environment.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to records management. First off, what's the difference between just any document and a record?
That's a really important distinction. Basically, all records start as documents. But a document only becomes a record if it provides evidence of a specific business action, transaction, or decision.
So, like, a finalized contract is a record, but maybe a draft email planning a meeting isn't.
Generally, yes. The contract proves an agreement, the draft email. Probably not, unless it contains a key decision or instruction not captured elsewhere. It's about the evidential value.
And we use document management systems, or DMS, to handle these.
We do. They're designed to track and store electronic documents and scanned images. They provide storage, yes, but also version control security, ways to add metadata.
Metadata, like tags or descriptions.
Exactly. Labels, keywords, dates, authors, information about the document that helps you find and manage it. Indexing and retrieval capabilities are key functions of a DMS.
So you need a strategy for all this content.
Definitely. A content management strategy helps you plan what content is actually relevant and useful. That strategy should then drive your technology choices, like which DMS to use.
And what about legal stuff? E-discovery.
Ah, yes. E-discovery is about finding and producing electronically stored information for legal cases or investigations. Being proactive is key, knowing where your potential records are stored before you get a request. Having an inventory of data sources is crucial.
And records have a life cycle, right? From creation to getting rid of them eventually.
Correct. Lifecycle management covers everything from capture or creation through active use, potentially to secondary storage or archiving, and finally to disposition, which might be secure destruction or permanent preservation, depending on the record.
And that involves retention policies, how long you keep stuff.
Yes, based on legal requirements, regulations, and business needs. You need clear rules for how long different types of records must be kept. And for long-term archiving, you need to ensure the format remains readable years down the line.
That metadata we mentioned seems really vital for finding unstructured stuff like documents.
Absolutely essential,
Eh.
especially for unstructured content. Using consistent terms, controlled vocabularies, or taxonomies helps immensely. Good information architecture, how you structure and navigate content, relies heavily on metadata.
And workflow, making sure content gets created properly.
Yeah, having defined workflows for content development ensures things get reviewed, approved, and published or stored correctly and on time.
Plus, you need to think about how people access it, different devices, formats.
Right. Delivery channels matter. People expect to access information on phones, tablets, laptops. The system needs to adapt.
So, bringing it all together, how do these two worlds, data storage and records management, strategically connect? It seems like storage choices really impact your ability to manage records.
They absolutely do. If your storage isn't easily searchable, or if you can't easily isolate specific data sets, then things like e-discovery or applying retention rules become incredibly difficult and costly.
And metadata seems like the bridge.
It's a huge part of the bridge, yes. Metadata describes the data for technical storage purposes, sure, but it also provides the business context needed for records management. Things like record type, retention code, security classification. It links the technical what with the business why and how long.
And data quality must underpin both.
Without a doubt.
Huh.
If your stored data is inaccurate or incomplete, it's useless for business intelligence, and it undermines the integrity of any records derived from it. Garbage in, garbage out applies everywhere.
Security, too, I assume, affects both.
Definitely. You need robust security for the stored data access controls, encryption, monitoring. And those controls often need to align with the specific requirements for managing sensitive or regulated records. Compliance is key.
And what about big data? All these new formats, data lakes, how does that impact traditional approaches?
It's a major disruptor. The sheer volume and variety challenge traditional, highly structured records management. How do you apply retention to a massive, constantly changing data lake? How do you perform e-discovery effectively? It requires new thinking, maybe more focus on metadata up front, different approaches like ELT, extract, load, transform versus the older ETL.
So it sounds like effectively linking data storage and records management isn't just an IT task, it's really a core strategic capability.
I believe it is. Getting it right means you're not only compliant in managing risk, but you're also potentially making your information more accessible, more usable, and ultimately more valuable.
Understanding this interplay seems crucial for any organization making decisions about their data strategy today. You need to think about storage with records in mind and manage records knowing how and where the underlying data lives.
Exactly. It's about building that bridge and ensuring smooth traffic across it.
Which brings us to a final thought for you listening. As data keeps growing in volume, variety, and velocity, how will organizations need to adapt their storage and records management practices? How can they move beyond just keeping up and actually use this integration to gain a real strategic advantage? Don't forget to subscribe and don't hesitate to tell us in the comments what topics are important for you.